Okay, so what I've gone and done is I've gone and bought a clip-on microphone, which is just like a game changer. So the point being that when I'm over here working on Mini, I can be talking to you, I can be explaining what I'm doing, but without having to bring the camera all the way over there all the time, which should mean less clips, more longevity within the videos. And the great thing about it is that I can walk all the way over here outside. Can you still hear me? I'm out here, I'm outside, but you can still hear me. And you can hear me crystal clear, which is amazing. So I'm hoping that's going to make a big change when I'm going through these different things. I can actually position the camera in such a way that as I'm showing you the parts that I'm doing and I'm talking, it'll make a little bit more sense because you'll be able to see the component parts that I'm actually talking about. So the plan for today is to grind down all the welds that we did on the last episode. I've got the replacement panels that I need to trim, grind down all the welds. I need to put underbody protection on it. I need to join it all together, at which point I can then think about taking the Mini off the stand, flipping it on its side. Once I've flipped it on its side, I can then look at the underside. Now, we welded the inner, but now we need to weld the underside where the old steel joins the new steel. But to access that, either I'd have to flip it all the way upside down and stand on top of it or something, which I really don't want to do, or flip it on its side as we had it previously in previous videos, at which point I could do a seam weld all the way underneath. So let's get going and have some fun. Okay, so we're trying something new. We've got the microphone plumbed in. I've got my seam sealer. So what I'm doing is just nicely lathering it in everywhere there's a weld. I'll fill in all the weld gaps. I've done a bit of grinding on here to grind it back. Obviously need to fill all the little bumps and crevices and things from grinding it back. I've taken it as flush as I can, but there's still bits that need filling in. I'll just use the seam sealer to fill that. That's going to give it longevity. It's going to give it protection for years to come. Stop it from rusting. Makes it a bit smoother as well to touch. It's horrible stuff, so we don't want to get it on our hands or our fingers. It's a nightmare to clean off. But it takes a while to dry. It can take up to 12 hours to get dry enough to paint, depending on the conditions. Well, it's summer at the minute, so it's pretty nice and warm. So it has the potential to dry between 1 to 2 hours until I can put some paint on it. So whilst I'm waiting for this to dry, I have some bits to tidy up with the grinder and the wheel wells. I can get in there and tidy them up and do the same, put some seam sealer in there as well. This is obviously over time going to stop any dirt and grime and water from getting in when the car's on the road. Obviously the worst time of year is going to be winter. Got all the salts on the road, so having this as a protection layer as well as our underbody protection should make the Mini last for years and years to come. Nearly there, just a bit there. And there's that side done. So what I've realised now is that although all this is now complete, there's components missing here now for mounting points for the petrol tank, and we've also got mounting points for the rear subframe. Now, I do have those parts on the donor mini, so what I'm going to have to do now is get this off the table, get it onto the forklift, move that out the way, then get the donor vehicle in, at which point I can cut the components out. So that will include a bracket here that mounts onto the petrol tank and holds it into position via a strap to this position, and also those mounting points, one on this side and one on this side, and they're going to then hold the rear subframe into position. So I need to get them off, but also I've got to be key on my measurements to make sure that everything fits when I do eventually put that subframe into position. So it might be a case of leaving those subframe mounts off and tacking them on here, but not actually welding them fully into position until I start to mount the subframe later on. But equally, I want to make sure that I've got all the components ready to go in before I put this back portion on and box myself in. And also I've noticed that there's parts cut out of this rear parcel shelf that are now going to need repair. So I've got a mint parcel shelf on that donor mini. So I'm going to cut out a sort of end piece all the way along, cut this out and weld it in, because we're still going to see that when we put the window in, so it needs to look perfect. Here we go. So we can now see the components. So I've got the strap position in there that I need to cut out, which is a sort of Z shape. So I'll cut that out. I also need these brackets here. So these brackets, it's a flat base and bolts through to the subframe underneath. Now the subframe on this is, for all intents and purposes, scrap because it's completely rotten, but I can reuse these components. The subframe's still on, so by cutting these out, the subframe's going to drop off at the same time, so I need to be quite careful how I do this. And also we've got this rear partial shelf here that's in good condition, so I'm going to cut all the way down there and then reuse this portion that I need on the other mini. So, as you can see, I've managed to now cut this part out. But there's still a lot of excess steel and part of the wheel arch connected to it. So I need to grind down the joins where that's welded together, and then cut off the excess steel. The component that I'm going to reuse is this bracket here. Previously you saw that I cut out this bracket, which is the bootstrap bracket, as sort of that way around. Obviously I can get points of measurement to fit this by using the mini that I've got outside, the completed mini. And the same with these in theory. You can see the sort of underside there. That's the bracket that holds the rear subframe on. So, provided I measure the correct hold centres from there backward to the wheel arch, once I've separated that component, I can weld it onto the repair where I need to, safe in the knowledge it's in the right place. So next we can move on to the other side. Okay, so next up we've got our bracket. This needs a bit of work, so we're going to cut that off. In addition to that, I've also got another bracket. So this is the boot bracket that's going to go in the boot, and it's going to be so that we can tighten up the strap that holds the petrol tank in place. So that bracket needs cleaning. I'll have to take the nut position off there, grind it all down, make it nice and fresh and clean. So fresh and so clean. And then same with this bracket, cutting it away from the steel behind it. Right, so let's see what we've achieved today. I have cut out the parcel shelf out of this Mini. I've also cut out the mounting positions for the subframe, the rear subframe, and that bracket we started with for the petrol tank. I've cleaned up one bracket. So one bracket here is ready to be mounted in there, but before I can weld that into position, I've got to get my hole centers correct for the subframe. Next one is the fuel tank bracket, again nice and clean, ready to be welded in. Need to mark up where that's going to actually sit based on looking at and measuring the completed Mini. I've got one more bracket here which needs removing from the old steel and cleaning up like we've done with that first bracket. But before we do any of that, we need to have a tidy up and get this old scrapper out of the way. That'll then give me the chance to sweep up and make ourselves nice and tidy and finish for today, so I can go and have a wash and get clean myself. So that's it for today's episode. I can't express more how important it is to have a tidy workplace once you've finished. Tidy up your mess so that the next time you come in, you know where everything is and it's tidy and ready for you to rock and roll.